The moment I lost control of the car, time seemed to slow. The vehicle rolled and twisted violently, the crunching of metal mingling with the shattering of glass. For a brief instant, I felt as if an invisible presence cradled my head, protecting me from the chaos. Then everything faded, and I slipped into what felt like a dream unlike any I had ever experienced. I wasn't merely asleep, I was weightless, unbound by the constraints of my physical form. At first, it was a sensation of flying, one I had often dreamed of as a child. In this state, however, I wasn't bound by the logic of those dreams. My movement wasn't dictated by gravity or thought. I tried to descend, but I couldn't. Instead, I was being drawn upward, gently and persistently, as though a force far greater than myself was guiding me. It wasn't frightening, it was serene. I became acutely aware of my surroundings. The air felt crisp and cool against my skin, the warmth of sunlight gently breaking through. My vision was sharper than ever before, more vivid than my waking moments. I could see the tops of the trees, their needles swaying in the wind, and the textures of the ground below. Everything was in perfect focus, as though reality itself had been heightened. When I looked down, I saw my body, partially out of the car, crumpled and still. A wave of realization swept over me. I was no longer tethered to it. As my awareness expanded, I turned my gaze upward. There, in the sky, was a phenomenon unlike anything I had ever seen. A swirling vortex of light, vibrant and alive, appeared to be a gateway to something beyond. It wasn't just light, it was a dynamic fusion of energy, resembling plasma and lightning, with stars and otherworldly hues dancing within it. It felt like the very center of the universe, a source from which all creation emanated and to which everything returned. The sight filled me with awe, a profound sense of recognition, as if I were witnessing something deeply familiar yet incomprehensible. In that moment, I fell to my knees, not in fear, but in reverence. I whispered words I didn't even fully understand, acknowledging the divine presence that permeated everything around me. My thoughts raced back to childhood, when I would lie awake at night, contemplating the boundless universe and its mysteries. I had always wondered about the vastness of existence, and now I was here, standing on the precipice of it. Suddenly, my life unfolded before me, not in the fragmented way memories surface, but as a seamless, panoramic review. Every moment, every choice, was presented in vivid clarity, not as I had perceived it, but from a perspective that revealed the impact of my actions on others. I saw the times I had been selfish, manipulative, or unkind, each instance resonating with a profound emotional weight. It wasn't a punishment, it was an opportunity for understanding. I felt the pain I had caused others as if it were my own, and with it came a deep sense of humility. The review was not limited to my missteps. It also highlighted the moments of love, kindness, and connection I had shared. These moments shone brightly, reminding me of the potential for good that exists within us all. Yet, the emphasis wasn't on tallying good versus bad. It was about understanding the interconnectedness of every action, every thought, and every intention. I realized that my life was not isolated. It was part of an intricate web that connected all beings. As I processed these revelations, a being of light approached. It was unlike any figure I had ever seen or imagined, a radiant presence composed entirely of light, exuding love and compassion so pure it was overwhelming. This being didn't fit the conventional imagery of Christ I had grown up with. It transcended human representations, embodying a universal and infinite love that defied description. Its presence was both comforting and awe-inspiring. The being spoke, not with words but through a direct communication that resonated within me. "You are forgiven," it said, its voice both gentle and powerful. "Being human is to experience imperfection. Your choices, your struggles, they are all part of the journey." At that moment, I felt a release, as though a heavy weight had been lifted from my very soul. The being explained that to be human is to navigate a world of duality, light and shadow, love and fear. Our task is not to be flawless but to strive for growth, understanding, and love. It assured me that I was not alone, that this infinite love was always present, guiding and supporting me, even when I couldn't perceive it. Filled with gratitude, I began to ask questions, not just about myself, but about the nature of existence. What is the purpose of life? I asked. Why are we here? The being's response was simple yet profound. To learn. To grow. To love. It showed me how every challenge, every triumph, and every moment of pain or joy was an opportunity for expansion. Each soul is on its own unique journey. Yet we are all interconnected, each contributing to the greater whole. Emboldened by this wisdom, I asked about the mysteries that had always fascinated me: aliens, parallel universes, the nature of reality. The being responded with a warmth that felt like a smile. It showed me glimpses of other realms, other forms of existence beyond what I had ever imagined. I saw flashes of beings and worlds vastly different from our own, yet connected through the same source of light and love. It was a reminder that creation is vast, infinite, and teeming with possibilities. As the experience deepened, I felt a subtle shift. The being's light seemed to grow even brighter, enveloping me in a warmth that was both comforting and energizing. I understood that this was not the end, it was a transition. A moment of clarity meant to guide me back to my life with renewed purpose. The being communicated that it was time for me to return, but not before imparting one final message. Live the truth. Share the light. You are capable of more than you know. Reluctantly, I began the journey back. Re-entering my body was jarring, like trying to fit an infinite consciousness into a finite vessel. My senses returned slowly, the pain of my injuries contrasting sharply with the peace I had felt moments before. Yet, even amidst the discomfort, I carried a sense of resolve. I knew that I had been given a gift, not just the gift of life but the understanding of its profound beauty and interconnectedness. As I lay in the wreckage, I saw a soldier who had arrived at the scene. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he knelt beside me. "You're alive," he whispered. I managed a weak smile. "I just spoke to God," I said. "Everything will be okay." Though my body was battered, my spirit felt unshakable. I had been to the edge of existence and back, and I knew that I carried within me the light of that experience. It wasn't just a memory, it was a guide, a reminder of the infinite love and connection that bind us all. My journey had only just begun. When I regained consciousness in the hospital, the fluorescent lights felt harsh, a stark contrast to the radiant warmth of the light I had experienced beyond. My body was battered, wrapped in bandages, and tethered to machines that hummed and beeped with clinical precision. The weight of my injuries pressed down on me, but what lingered most was the vivid memory of the light and the being I had encountered. It was more than a memory, it was a presence that seemed to fill the sterile hospital room with a quiet but profound reassurance. The nurses moved around me with a mix of efficiency and concern, their voices soft yet urgent. One of them, a woman with kind eyes, leaned over and asked, "Can you hear me? Do you know where you are?" I nodded weakly, managing to whisper, "I'm here, but I've been somewhere else." Her expression shifted, a flicker of curiosity crossing her face before she returned to her duties. To her, I was just another patient, another body in need of care. But to me, I was more than that now. I was someone who had touched the infinite, someone entrusted with a message that felt both weighty and empowering. In the days that followed, I oscillated between the physical pain of recovery and the spiritual clarity of what I had experienced. My body felt foreign, like an ill-fitting suit that I had to learn to wear again. Simple movements were excruciating, and every breath reminded me of the fragility of my earthly form. Yet, amidst the pain, there was a sense of purpose that burned brightly within me, a guiding light that made even the smallest victories, sitting up, taking a sip of water, feel monumental. I began to reflect deeply on the life review I had been shown. It wasn't just a series of memories, it was a mirror, reflecting not only my actions but the ripple effects they had on others. I saw moments where my words had hurt, where my silence had failed to offer comfort, where my choices had been guided by fear or selfishness. But I also saw the moments of love and connection, times when a kind word, a gesture of understanding, or a small act of generosity had created ripples of light in the lives of others. These reflections brought with them a profound realization: every action, no matter how small, carries weight. The choices we make, the intentions behind them, and the energy we put into the world all contribute to the intricate web of existence. This understanding was both humbling and motivating. I knew I couldn't change the past, but I could move forward with greater awareness. striving to live in alignment with the truth and love I had experienced. The being of light's words echoed in my mind: live the truth. Share the light. They weren't just a directive, they were an invitation. A reminder that my life wasn't just about surviving but about thriving. About embracing the opportunity to contribute to the collective tapestry of connection and love. I began to see my recovery not as a burden but as a chance to rebuild, not just my body but my spirit and my relationships. One day, as I lay in my hospital bed, a nurse brought me a small journal and a pen. "I thought you might like this," she said with a gentle smile. "Sometimes writing helps." I thanked her and stared at the blank pages for a long time, unsure of where to begin. But then, as if guided by an unseen force, the words began to flow. I wrote about the accident, the light, the being, and the messages I had received. I wrote about the life review and the profound interconnectedness I had witnessed. The act of putting these experiences into words felt both cathartic and purposeful, as though I was translating something infinite into a language I could share. Writing became a daily ritual, a way to process the enormity of what I had experienced. The journal filled quickly, its pages capturing not only my memories but also the questions that had begun to surface. How could I share what I had seen without overwhelming others? How could I live in a way that honored the light and the truth? What did it mean to truly live? As the weeks passed, I began to notice changes in the way I viewed the world. Small things that I had once taken for granted. A ray of sunlight streaming through the window. The sound of laughter in the hallway. The kindness of a stranger, now felt imbued with a deeper significance. Each moment was a gift, a reminder of the beauty and fragility of life. I also began to notice a shift in my relationships. The people closest to me, family, friends, even the medical staff, seemed drawn to the calm and clarity I carried. It wasn't something I was consciously projecting, it was simply a reflection of the light I had experienced. Conversations became deeper, more honest. People shared their fears, their hopes, their questions about life and death. In those moments, I felt not like a teacher but a companion, someone who could walk with them on their journey toward understanding. One evening, my younger sister, Claire, visited me. She sat by my bedside, her eyes filled with concern and a hint of curiosity. "You've been through so much," she said softly, "but you seem different, like you found something." I smiled, feeling the weight of her words. I replied. "I found that life is more connected, more beautiful, and more fragile than I ever realized. And I found that love is the thread that holds it all together." Claire nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think we've been missing something all this time? Something important?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I think we've been so focused on surviving, on achieving, that we've forgotten how to simply be, how to connect, to love, to live with intention. But it's never too late to remember." Her visit marked a turning point. I began to see my experience not as something to keep to myself but as something to share. Not as a story to tell but as a way of being. The light I had encountered wasn't just a memory, it was a guide. A presence that reminded me to approach each day with humility, gratitude, and love. As I continued to heal, I started to think about the future. I didn't have all the answers, far from it, but I knew that my life could no longer be about simply going through the motions. It had to be about connection, about contributing to the web of light that binds us all, whether through a kind word, a listening ear, or a small act of service. I wanted to honor the truth I had been shown. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, I didn't fear it. The light I had touched, the love I had felt, and the wisdom I had gained were enough to guide me. I wasn't perfect, and I knew I would stumble, but I also knew that each step forward, no matter how small, was part of the journey. And so, as I lay in that hospital bed, surrounded by the hum of machines and the quiet rhythm of my own breathing, I made a promise to myself, to the being of light, and to the infinite source of love that connects us all. I promised to live with truth, to share the light, and to embrace the beautiful, fragile gift of life with open hands and an open heart. My journey was far from over, it was just beginning. When I was discharged from the hospital, stepping outside for the first time felt like being reborn. The air was cooler than I expected, its crispness cutting through the remnants of the sterile hospital environment that still clung to me. Each breath felt deliberate, as if the simple act of inhaling life itself had become a conscious choice. The light of the sun, once just an everyday fixture, now seemed to envelop everything in a warm embrace. A faint echo of the brilliance I had encountered beyond. I returned home, my movements slow and deliberate, my body still in the process of mending. The once familiar spaces of my house now felt different, almost foreign. The couch where I had once collapsed after long days of work now seemed to invite me into moments of reflection. The clutter on the kitchen counter, a mix of unopened mail, half-used notebooks, and forgotten trinkets, felt like a reminder of how often life's true priorities are overshadowed by distractions. As I eased back into the routines of daily life, I found myself grappling with the enormity of what I had experienced. The light, the life review, the being's message, they were all vivid, undeniable truths, but integrating them into my life was not as simple as I had hoped. The world around me remained unchanged in its complexity and challenges, yet I could no longer see it through the same lens. I carried a dual awareness, the mundane concerns of daily existence and the profound interconnectedness that I had witnessed beyond. One of the first challenges I faced was explaining my experience to others. My family, while supportive, often struggled to fully grasp what I had been through. Claire, my sister, was among the few who leaned in with genuine curiosity. She visited often, bringing me soup or tea, her quiet presence a source of comfort. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, she asked, "Do you ever think about why this happened to you? Why now?" Her question lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. All the time, I admitted, I don't think it was random. There's something I'm supposed to do. Something I'm supposed to share. But figuring out how, that's the part I'm still trying to understand. Claire nodded thoughtfully. Maybe it's not about figuring it out all at once, she said. Maybe it's about taking small steps and letting it unfold. Her words resonated deeply, echoing the message of the being of light. Live the truth, share the light. It wasn't a demand for perfection or instant transformation. It was an invitation to live with intention. To allow the light to guide each step, no matter how small. I began to take those steps, starting with the people closest to me. Friends who came to visit would often comment on the change they saw in me. "You seem different," one of them said during a visit. "Calmer, like you found something." I would smile, unsure of how to explain what I had experienced without overwhelming them. "I've just gained a new perspective," I would say, a deeper appreciation for how connected we all are. Some conversations went deeper. One evening, a close friend, Laura, confided in me about her struggles with anxiety. "It feels like I'm always racing against something," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. "Like I can never catch my breath." Her vulnerability opened a door, and I shared my experience with her, not all at once, but in pieces, allowing her to absorb it at her own pace. I spoke about the life review, the weight of our choices, and the profound love that exists within and around us. It's not about being perfect, I told her. It's about being present, about choosing love over fear, one moment at a time. Laura listened intently, her eyes brimming with tears. "That's beautiful," she said. "I've never thought about life that way." Our conversation marked the beginning of a shift, not just in her but in me as well. I realized that sharing my story wasn't about convincing others or providing answers. It was about creating space for reflection, for connection, and for the light to shine in its own way. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself drawn to moments of stillness and contemplation. I would sit in the garden, watching the way sunlight danced through the leaves, or take long walks, feeling the rhythm of my breath and the steady beat of my heart. These moments weren't just about finding peace, they were about reconnecting with the light, grounding myself in the love and truth I had been shown. I also began to explore ways to translate the being's message into action. The idea of living the truth wasn't abstract, it was practical. It meant aligning my choices with my values, being honest with myself and others, and approaching each interaction with compassion and authenticity. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when old patterns of fear or impatience crept in, but I learned to recognize them and return to the light within. One of the most significant changes was how I approached relationships. I became more intentional about reaching out to people I had lost touch with, repairing old wounds, and deepening the connections that mattered most. Each conversation, each gesture of love, felt like a thread being woven into a larger tapestry, a tapestry of connection and healing that extended far beyond my individual life. One afternoon, I decided to call an old friend, Michael, with whom I had had a falling out years ago. The conflict had been petty, a misunderstanding that had grown into a wall of silence between us. As I dialed his number, my heart raced with a mix of anxiety and hope. When he answered, there was a pause before he said, "Wow, I wasn't expecting to hear from you." "I know," I said, my voice steady but vulnerable. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I've been thinking a lot about how we let something so small come between us. And I don't want to carry that anymore." Michael's response was immediate and heartfelt. "I've missed you," he said, "and I'm sorry too. Let's put it behind us." That conversation was a turning point. It reminded me that reconciliation wasn't just about mending relationships. It was about freeing ourselves from the burdens of the past, allowing love to flow where fear and resentment had taken root. As these moments accumulated, I began to see the ripple effects of living with intention. People around me started to open up, sharing their own struggles and hopes. The connections we formed were deeper, more genuine, and rooted in a shared recognition of our humanity. I still didn't have all the answers, but I was learning to trust the process. The light I had encountered wasn't just a memory, it was a guide. A constant presence that reminded me to choose love, truth, and connection. Each day brought new opportunities to honor that light, to weave another thread into the tapestry of life. The journey ahead was still unfolding, but I no longer felt the need to rush or force it. I understood that living the truth wasn't about perfection, it was about presence. It was about showing up, moment by moment, with an open heart and a willingness to embrace the beauty and complexity of life. And so, I continued to walk the path, guided by the light and love that had transformed me. Each step was an act of faith, a choice to live in alignment with the infinite source of connection that binds us all. My journey was far from over, but I knew that every step, no matter how small, was part of something far greater than myself. As the weeks turned into months, I began to notice how profoundly my perspective on life had shifted. The world around me remained the same in many ways, people rushing to and from work, worrying over bills, and navigating daily challenges. But for me, each moment carried a newfound depth, as though a veil had been lifted to reveal the intricate beauty woven into the fabric of existence. I saw meaning in the smallest things, the way sunlight filtered through the trees, the sound of laughter echoing from a nearby park, or the kindness of a stranger holding open a door. Life was no longer a series of tasks to complete but a symphony of connection, love, and purpose. One of the first major steps I took in embracing this shift was simplifying my life. The accident had been a wake-up call, not just physically but emotionally and spiritually. I began to evaluate what truly mattered to me, what brought joy, peace, and fulfillment, and to let go of the things that didn't align with those values. This process wasn't easy. It meant facing some hard truths about how I had been living, the priorities I had clung to, and the fears that had driven many of my decisions. I started with my home. The clutter that had once seemed insignificant now felt like a reflection of the inner chaos I had carried before the accident. I spent days sorting through piles of forgotten belongings, discarding what no longer served me and keeping only what felt meaningful. Each item I let go of felt like a release, a way of creating space not just in my home but in my heart and mind. By the time I finished, my home felt lighter, more open, a physical representation of the clarity I was striving to cultivate within myself. This newfound clarity extended to my relationships as well. I became more intentional about how I spent my time and who I spent it with. I sought out people who inspired me, who shared my commitment to living with authenticity and love. At the same time, I found the courage to set boundaries with those whose energy or intentions felt misaligned with my path. This wasn't about judgment or rejection. It was about honoring the light within me and surrounding myself with people who nurtured it. One of the most surprising shifts was in how I approached my work. Before the accident, my job had been a source of stress and frustration, something I endured to pay the bills rather than something that brought me fulfillment. But as I returned to work, I found myself seeing it through a different lens. My interactions with colleagues became opportunities to connect, to listen, and to offer kindness. Tasks that had once felt mundane took on a new significance as I approached them with gratitude and intention. One day, during a lunch break, a coworker named Linda sat down beside me. She had always been quiet and reserved, someone who kept to herself. But that day, she surprised me by opening up about a personal struggle she was facing. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "but you seem different. Like you understand." I listened as she spoke, offering her my full attention and an open heart. When she finished, I shared a bit about my own journey, not the full story, but enough to let her know she wasn't alone. By the end of our conversation, her expression had softened, her shoulders less tense. "Thank you," she said. "I didn't realize how much I needed someone to listen." Moments like these became more common as I continued to walk in the light. People seemed drawn to the calm and clarity I carried, and I realized that simply being present, truly present, was one of the most powerful gifts I could offer. It wasn't about fixing problems or offering advice. It was about creating space for others to feel seen, heard, and valued. At the same time, I continued to grapple with the enormity of the vision I had been shown during my near-death experience. The life review, the being of light, the interconnectedness of all things, they were truths I carried with me every day. But integrating them fully into my life was a process. I often found myself reflecting on the being's words. Live the truth. Share the light. What did it mean to live the truth in a world that often felt so chaotic and divided? How could I share the light in ways that were meaningful and accessible to others? The answers didn't come all at once, but they began to reveal themselves in small, subtle ways. Living the truth, I realized, was about alignment, ensuring that my actions, words, and intentions were consistent with the values I held dear. It meant choosing love over fear, even in difficult moments, and staying rooted in the light, even when darkness threatened to overwhelm. Sharing the light was equally nuanced. It wasn't about grand gestures or sweeping proclamations, it was about the quiet, everyday ways I could bring love and connection into the world. A kind word, a smile, a moment of patience. These were the threads that wove together the tapestry of light I was called to create. One evening, as I sat in my garden watching the sunset, I felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over me. The colors of the sky, golden hues blending into soft purples and blues, reminded me of the light I had seen beyond. The infinite beauty that exists in every corner of creation. In that moment, I realized that the light wasn't just something I had experienced, it was something I carried within me. Something we all carry within us. It was a reminder that even in the midst of life's challenges, we have the power to choose love, to create connection, and to live with purpose. As the stars began to emerge, I closed my eyes and whispered a quiet prayer, not a plea for guidance but a simple expression of gratitude. For the journey I had been on, for the people who had walked beside me, and for the light that continued to guide my path. The road ahead was still unfolding, but I no longer felt the need to see every twist and turn. I trusted the light to illuminate each step, knowing that every choice I made in love and truth was part of something far greater than myself. My journey was not just about my own growth, it was about contributing to the web of light that connects us all. Weaving a tapestry of hope, resilience, and infinite love, and with each step forward, I felt the quiet reassurance of the light within, a constant reminder that I was never truly alone. As I continued my journey of healing and rediscovery, I began to notice how the light within me resonated with those around me. It wasn't something I consciously projected or tried to explain, it was simply a presence that others seemed to feel. The more I aligned my actions with the truth I had experienced, the more the world around me seemed to respond in kind. People opened up, conversations deepened, and even ordinary moments took on an extraordinary quality. One day, I was running errands when I stopped at a small cafe for a cup of coffee. The barista, a young man named Ethan, seemed distracted and frazzled, his movements rushed and his responses curt. When it was my turn, I smiled warmly and said, "Take your time, no rush." He paused for a moment, his tense shoulders relaxing slightly. "Thanks," he said, his voice softening. "It's been a rough morning." I nodded, sensing his need for a moment of kindness. "You're doing a great job," I said sincerely. "I hope your day gets better." His eyes met mine, and a faint smile crossed his face. "Thanks. That means a lot." It was a simple interaction, one that lasted no more than a minute. But as I left the cafe, I felt the ripple of that exchange. It reminded me that even the smallest acts of kindness, offering a smile, a word of encouragement, or a moment of patience, could create waves of light that extended far beyond what I could see. These moments began to accumulate, each one reinforcing the interconnectedness I had witnessed during my near-death experience. It wasn't just about me or the choices I made, it was about the collective impact of those choices. The way they touched others and inspired them to carry that light forward. The ripple effect wasn't linear or predictable, it was expansive, like drops of water merging to create an ever-growing wave. One evening, I was invited to speak at a community gathering. It was a small group, about 20 people, seated in a circle in a cozy living room. The host, a woman named Caroline, had heard about my experience through a mutual friend and had asked if I would share my story. As I began to speak, I felt the familiar mixture of nervousness and gratitude. I described the accident, the life review, and the being of light who had guided me. I spoke about the profound interconnectedness I had witnessed and the call to live with truth and share the light. The room was quiet, the only sound the occasional crackle of the fireplace. When I finished, there was a pause before a man named Robert, who appeared to be in his 60s, spoke up. "Your story reminds me of something I've been struggling with for years." He said, "I had a falling out with my son a long time ago. We haven't spoken since, and I've always felt like it was too late to fix things. But hearing you talk about connection and forgiveness, it makes me wonder if maybe it's not too late." His words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. I looked at him, feeling the weight of his pain but also the hope that had begun to take root. "It's never too late," I said gently. "Love and forgiveness have a way of breaking through even the deepest wounds. If you feel that pull, trust it, it's the light guiding you." The group spent the rest of the evening sharing their own reflections and questions. Some spoke about their struggles with forgiveness, others about their desire to live more authentically. By the time the gathering ended, there was a palpable sense of connection and hope in the room. People lingered, exchanging hugs and words of encouragement, as though the light we had shared had ignited something within each of them. In the weeks that followed, I heard from Caroline that Robert had reached out to his son. Their first conversation had been tentative, but it had opened the door to a reconciliation he had thought impossible. Stories like his became a source of inspiration for me, a reminder that the light wasn't just something I carried, it was something that could be awakened in others, creating ripples that extended far beyond what I could imagine. I also began to see the ripple effect in my own relationships. My connection with Claire deepened as we continued to have honest, heartfelt conversations about life, love, and the struggles we both faced. One afternoon, as we sat together in her backyard, she turned to me and said, "You've changed, you know. It's not just what happened to you, it's how you've chosen to live since then." It's inspiring. Her words touched me deeply. Not because they validated my experience but because they reflected the truth I had been striving to live. "It's not just me," I said. "We all have that light within us. I think the real challenge is learning to trust it, to let it guide us." Claire nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "Maybe that's the hardest part, trusting it. But watching you has made me want to try." As these connections deepened, I found myself reflecting on the being of light's message, live the truth, share the light. Each day, I tried to embody those words in both big and small ways. Whether it was listening with full attention, offering a kind word, or simply being present, I sought to align my actions with the love and interconnectedness I had experienced beyond. I also began to explore ways to share the light on a larger scale. I started writing more, not just in my journal but in essays and articles that I shared online. My words weren't about convincing others or presenting definitive answers, they were an invitation to reflect, to question, and to connect. The responses I received were often deeply personal, filled with stories of hope, struggle, and transformation. One message, in particular, stayed with me. It was from a young woman named Sophia, who wrote, "Your words gave me the courage to reach out to my estranged father." It wasn't easy, and we have a long way to go. But for the first time in years, I feel like there's hope. Her message reminded me of Robert's story, of the countless ripples created by small acts of love and courage. Each choice, each connection, was like a thread being woven into the tapestry of light that binds us all. As the seasons changed and the world around me shifted, I felt a growing sense of gratitude for the journey I was on. The path wasn't always easy, and there were still moments of doubt and struggle. But the light within me was a constant guide, a quiet presence that reminded me to keep moving forward. With each step, I saw the ripple effect of light spreading further, touching lives in ways I could never have anticipated. And as I continued to walk this path, I carried with me the profound truth I had been shown, that we are all connected. That love is the thread that binds us, and that even the smallest acts of kindness have the power to change the world. My journey was far from over, but I knew that every step, every choice, was part of something far greater than myself, a tapestry of infinite love and light. As the ripples of light extended outward, I began to see how profoundly interconnected we all are. Each conversation, each small act of kindness, was like a spark that ignited something in others, a spark that, in turn, spread to those around them. The more I embraced this truth, the more I realized that my journey was not just about sharing my story, it was about building bridges. Creating spaces where love and connection could flourish. One of the most meaningful bridges I built was with my mother. Our relationship had always been loving, but it had also been marked by unspoken tensions, old misunderstandings and disagreements that we had never fully addressed. Before my near-death experience, I had often avoided difficult conversations, fearing the discomfort they might bring. But now, I understood that true connection required vulnerability and courage. One Sunday afternoon, as we sat together in her sunlit kitchen, I decided to speak. "Mom," I began hesitantly, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about our relationship. There are things I wish I'd said before, things I want to say now." She looked at me with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean that I want to thank you," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "for everything you've done for me, for the love you've given me, even when I didn't always show it back. I know I've hurt you at times, and I'm sorry. I don't want to take you for granted anymore." Her eyes filled with tears as she reached for my hand. "I've always known you loved me," she said softly, "but hearing you say it like this, it means so much." In that moment, something shifted between us. The walls we had unconsciously built began to crumble, replaced by a sense of openness and mutual understanding. It wasn't just about the words we exchanged, it was about the light we allowed to shine through. The love that had always been there but now flowed more freely. That conversation became a turning point, not just for our relationship but for how I approached all of my connections. I realized that building bridges wasn't about erasing differences or avoiding conflict. It was about creating pathways for love and understanding to flow, even in the face of challenges. This realization deepened my commitment to the being of light's message: live the truth, share the light. Living the truth meant acknowledging my own imperfections and striving to be authentic in every interaction. Sharing the light meant offering love and kindness, not as a strategy or an obligation, but as a natural extension of the connection I felt to others. One day, I received an invitation to speak at a local school. The principal had heard about my experience and wanted me to share it with the students as part of a program on resilience and hope. I hesitated at first, unsure of how to convey such profound truths to a younger audience. But then I remembered the light and how it had guided me. And I decided to trust that it would guide me again. When the day arrived, I stood before a room full of teenagers, their faces a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. I began by sharing the basics of my story, the accident, the life review, the being of light. But as I spoke, I focused less on the details and more on the lessons I had learned. The importance of connection, the power of kindness, and the value of living with intention. What I experienced taught me that we're all connected, I said, my voice steady. Every choice you make, how you treat yourself, how you treat others, creates ripples that go far beyond what you can see. You have the power to make those ripples ones of love, ones that bring light into the world. By the time I finished, the room was silent, the students' expressions thoughtful, A young girl in the front row raised her hand. "Do you ever get scared?" she asked. "Scared that you'll mess up or forget what you learned?" Her question was so earnest, so vulnerable, that it took me a moment to respond. Yes, I admitted, there are times when I doubt myself or feel overwhelmed. But what I've learned is that it's not about being perfect. It's about trying, about choosing love even when it's hard. And when I do mess up, I remind myself that I can always start again. Her nod of understanding felt like a bridge, a connection that reminded me why I had been given this journey. It wasn't to provide answers or solutions, it was to inspire others to find their own light, their own truth. In the days that followed, I received letters from some of the students. One boy wrote, "Your story made me realize I've been pushing people away because I'm scared of getting hurt. I want to change that." Another shared, "I've been feeling lost, but hearing you talk about connection made me think about reaching out to my family." Each letter was a testament to the power of light, not just as something I had experienced but as something that lived within all of us. The bridges we built weren't just connections between individuals, they were pathways for love and healing to flow through entire communities. As I continued to build these bridges, I began to notice how they transformed me as well. The more I gave, the more I felt connected to the infinite source of love and light that had guided me during my near-death experience. Each conversation, each act of kindness, was like a thread being woven into the tapestry of life, strengthening the web of connection that binds us all. One evening, as I sat alone in my quiet home, I reflected on the journey I had been on. The light I had seen beyond was no longer just a memory, it was a living presence. A guide that continued to illuminate my path. I understood now that the bridges I was building weren't just for others, they were for me as well. They were reminders of the truth I had been shown, that love is the foundation of everything, and that each of us has the power to create ripples of light that extend far beyond what we can see. With this understanding, I felt a deep sense of peace. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but I no longer feared it. I trusted the light to guide me, knowing that every step, every choice, and every connection was part of something far greater than myself, a tapestry of love and light that stretched across time and space, uniting us all. As my journey continued, I began to encounter a recurring theme: forgiveness. The life review I had experienced during my near-death encounter had shown me the impact of my actions, both good and bad. It also illuminated the ways in which pain and resentment had shaped my life. Now, in the wake of that experience, I found myself drawn to the practice of forgiveness, not just as a way to heal old wounds but as a path to deeper connection and freedom. One of the first steps on this path was forgiving myself. The life review had been a mirror, revealing moments of selfishness, anger, and fear-driven decisions. At first, these memories felt overwhelming, as though they defined me. But the being of light had reminded me that being human means making mistakes and that forgiveness is an essential part of growth. Sitting in the quiet of my home, I decided to confront these memories. I wrote each one down, every choice I regretted, every moment of harm I had caused. Seeing them on paper was both painful and liberating. Then, with each one, I whispered the same words: I forgive myself. I choose to learn and grow. This wasn't a one-time act. Forgiveness was a process, one that required patience and compassion. Some memories resurfaced repeatedly, their weight heavier than others. But each time they arose, I met them with the same resolve: to acknowledge, to forgive, and to release. As I worked on forgiving myself, I realized that the next step was extending that forgiveness to others. There were people in my life who had hurt me deeply, some unintentionally, others knowingly. Before my near-death experience, I had carried those wounds like armor, believing that holding onto them would protect me from further pain. But now I understood that this armor was a prison, keeping me bound to the very pain I sought to escape. One person who came to mind was my former friend Sarah. We had been close for years, but a misunderstanding had driven a wedge between us. The conflict had escalated, each of us saying things we later regretted. For years, we had avoided each other, the silence between us filled with unresolved hurt. I decided to reach out to her. It wasn't easy. My fingers hovered over my phone, the fear of rejection whispering in my mind. But I reminded myself of the light, the interconnectedness I had experienced, and the power of forgiveness to heal. When I finally called, Sarah answered hesitantly. "Hi," I began, my voice shaking slightly. "It's been a long time. I've been thinking about us. About what happened. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for my part in it. I miss our friendship." There was a pause, and for a moment, I feared she would hang up. But then she spoke, her voice soft. "I've missed you too," she said, "and I'm sorry too. I think we both made mistakes. But I'd like to move past them." That conversation marked the beginning of a reconciliation I hadn't thought possible. Over time, Sarah and I rebuilt our friendship. Not by pretending the past hadn't happened but by choosing to learn from it. Each step we took toward forgiveness felt like a thread weaving us back together, strengthening the connection that had once been frayed. As I practiced forgiveness in my personal life, I began to see its ripple effects in the world around me. People I spoke with shared their own stories of pain and reconciliation. Inspired by my journey, one such story came from a man named Daniel, whom I met at a community event. He told me about his estranged brother, with whom he hadn't spoken in over a decade. "I've been holding on to so much anger," Daniel admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. "But hearing your story, it makes me wonder if I'm ready to let it go." I encouraged him to trust that feeling, to take small steps toward forgiveness. A few weeks later, he reached out to tell me that he and his brother had begun talking again. "It's not perfect," he said, "but it's a start, and it feels like a weight has been lifted." These stories reminded me that forgiveness wasn't just about mending relationships. It was about freeing ourselves from the chains of resentment and opening our hearts to love. Each act of forgiveness, no matter how small, was a step toward the light, a way of creating space for connection and healing. But forgiveness wasn't always easy. There were moments when anger and pain resurfaced, challenging my resolve. During those times, I turned to the light within me, seeking guidance and strength. I remembered the being of light's words, "You are forgiven." If I had been granted forgiveness for my imperfections, how could I withhold that same grace from others? One evening, as I sat reflecting on my journey, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the lessons forgiveness had taught me. It wasn't about forgetting or condoning harm. It was about choosing love over fear, freedom over bitterness. Forgiveness was a gift, not just to others but to myself, a way of aligning with the light and truth I had experienced. As the days passed, I continued to walk this path, building bridges where there had once been walls. Each act of forgiveness, each step toward reconciliation, felt like a thread in the tapestry of light I was weaving. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments of doubt and struggle. But the light within me was a constant guide, reminding me that every choice to forgive, every act of love, was part of something far greater than myself. The journey of forgiveness was far from over, but I knew that each step forward was a step toward healing, not just for me, but for everyone whose lives were touched by the ripples of love and light. Together, we were creating a world where forgiveness wasn't just an ideal but a living reality. A bridge that connected us to each other and to the infinite source of love that binds us all. As forgiveness wove itself deeper into my life, I began to understand its companion, love, not the fleeting, conditional kind of love that depended on circumstances or expectations, but the kind of love I had felt in the presence of the being of light, unconditional, boundless, and transformative. This love was a force that healed not only relationships but also the wounds within myself, guiding me toward a fuller understanding of who I was and who I was meant to be. The first time I truly felt the healing power of this love was during a quiet moment in my garden. The air was cool, the leaves rustling softly in the wind, and the scent of earth and blooming flowers filled the air. I sat on an old wooden bench, letting the stillness wash over me. As I closed my eyes, I felt the presence of the light, not as a distant memory but as something alive within me. It was as though the love I had encountered beyond had taken root in my heart, growing stronger with each moment of gratitude, forgiveness, and connection. In that stillness, I realized how much of my life I had spent searching for love outside of myself, seeking validation, approval, and affection from others while neglecting the light within. Now, for the first time, I understood that the love I sought had always been there, waiting for me to recognize it. This revelation wasn't just comforting, it was liberating. It gave me the strength to face my fears, my insecurities, and the parts of myself I had long avoided. This inner healing began to ripple outward, influencing how I interacted with the world. I found myself approaching others with a deeper sense of compassion, seeing them not just as individuals but as reflections of the same light and love that connected us all. Conversations that might once have frustrated me became opportunities to listen and understand. Moments of conflict became chances to choose patience and kindness. One such moment came during a family gathering. My cousin, Mark, had always been outspoken, his opinions often clashing with those of others. That evening, he made a comment that sparked a heated debate around the table. Tensions rose quickly, voices growing louder as each person tried to assert their perspective. In the past, I might have joined the fray or retreated into silence, uncomfortable with the confrontation, but this time, I chose a different path. I waited for a pause, then spoke softly but firmly. "Mark," I said, "I hear what you're saying, and I can see that it's coming from a place of passion. I think we all have strong feelings about this because we care deeply. Maybe we can focus on what we have in common rather than what divides us." The room fell silent for a moment, and I could see Mark's expression shift. His defensiveness softened, replaced by a look of surprise and, perhaps, relief. "I hadn't thought about it that way," he admitted. "You're right, we all care. Maybe we're just coming at it from different angles." The conversation that followed was more thoughtful, more respectful, and ultimately more productive. It wasn't about everyone agreeing or resolving their differences, it was about creating space for understanding, for connection. That evening, I saw how love could transform even the most challenging interactions, turning moments of division into opportunities for growth. Beyond my personal relationships, I began to explore how love could influence my broader community. I volunteered at a local shelter, spending time with people who were navigating hardships. At first, I worried that I wouldn't know what to say or do, that my presence wouldn't be enough. But I quickly realized that love didn't require grand gestures or perfect words. It was in the simple acts, listening to someone's story, offering a warm meal, sharing a genuine smile, that the light of love shone most brightly. One evening at the shelter, I met a woman named Maria. She had been through unimaginable struggles, yet her spirit was unbroken. As we talked, she shared her dreams of rebuilding her life, her voice filled with both hope and uncertainty. "Do you really think it's possible?" she asked me, her eyes searching mine. "I do," I said without hesitation. "I've seen how powerful love and resilience can be. You have so much strength within you, and there are people who want to support you. You're not alone." Maria's face lit up with a mixture of gratitude and determination. "Thank you," she said. "Sometimes, it's hard to believe in myself. But hearing you say that, it gives me hope." That conversation stayed with me, a reminder of the impact even the smallest expressions of love can have. It wasn't about fixing Maria's problems or providing solutions. It was about reminding her of the light within her, the strength she already possessed. In doing so, I was reminded of my own light, my own strength. As these moments accumulated, I began to see love not as something to be given or received but as something to be lived. It was a state of being, a way of moving through the world with openness, gratitude, and intention. Love wasn't always easy, it required vulnerability, courage, and a willingness to let go of fear. But it was always worth it, because love had the power to heal, to connect, and to transform. One evening, as I sat by the window watching the stars, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. The accident, the near-death experience, the being of light, all of it had been a catalyst for awakening, a reminder of the infinite love that exists within and around us. But the journey wasn't just about looking back, it was about moving forward, about choosing to live each day as a reflection of that love. The path wasn't always clear, and there were still moments of doubt and struggle. But I had come to trust the light within me, to believe in the power of love to guide me through even the darkest times. Each act of kindness, each moment of connection, was a step on this path, a way of weaving the tapestry of light and love that bound us all. As the night deepened, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The journey was far from over, but I no longer feared it. I knew that as long as I chose love, as long as I lived with truth and shared the light, I was exactly where I needed to be. Together, we were building a world where love was not just an ideal but a reality. A bridge that connected us to each other and to the infinite source of light that guides us all. As I continued to explore the transformative power of love, I began to feel a pull towards something larger, a sense of purpose that extended beyond my personal healing and relationships. The being of light had shown me that we are all interconnected, each of us part of a vast tapestry of life. Now, I felt a growing responsibility to contribute to that tapestry, to use my experiences to create something meaningful that could inspire and uplift others. This sense of purpose didn't arrive all at once. It began as a quiet whisper, a subtle nudge that urged me to look beyond myself. At first, I wasn't sure what form it would take. Writing, speaking, volunteering, there were so many possibilities, and each one felt daunting in its own way. But as I reflected on my journey, I realized that purpose didn't have to be grand or complicated. It simply had to be authentic, rooted in the truth I had been shown. One morning, as I sat with my journal, I wrote a question at the top of the page: what is my purpose? The answer didn't come immediately, but as I wrote, fragments of ideas began to emerge. I thought about the people I had met since the accident, their stories of resilience, their struggles, and their courage. I thought about the moments of connection and healing I had witnessed, the way love and light had transformed even the most difficult situations. Gradually, a vision began to take shape. My purpose wasn't about fixing the world or solving its problems. It was about being a catalyst for connection and hope. It was about sharing my story, not as an answer but as an invitation for others to reflect on their own journeys. It was about creating spaces where people could feel seen, heard, and valued, where they could rediscover the light within themselves. With this clarity, I began to take action. I started small, hosting gatherings in my home where people could come together to share their experiences and support one another. These gatherings weren't formal or structured, they were simply opportunities for connection. We would sit in a circle, sharing stories, asking questions, and offering encouragement. Each gathering felt like a spark, igniting a sense of community and hope that extended far beyond the walls of my home. As word spread, the gatherings grew. People from different walks of life came together, united by a shared desire to find meaning and connection. Some came seeking solace after loss. Others came to explore their spirituality or to deepen their relationships. Each person brought their own unique light, and together, we created something beautiful, a space where love and truth could flourish. One evening, a woman named Elena shared her story. She had been struggling with grief after losing her husband and felt lost, unsure of how to move forward. "I've been carrying this weight for so long," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to let it go." As she spoke, the group listened with quiet compassion. When she finished, I placed a hand on hers and said, "You don't have to carry it alone. Grief is heavy, but it's also a testament to the love you shared. Let that love be your guide. It doesn't mean forgetting, it means finding a way to honor him by living fully." Elena nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she said. "I needed to hear that." Moments like these reaffirmed my belief in the power of connection. It wasn't about having the right answers, it was about being present, offering love and understanding, and creating a space where healing could begin. Each story shared, each moment of vulnerability, was a thread in the tapestry we were weaving together. As the gatherings continued, I began to receive invitations to speak at other events, churches, schools, community centers. At first, I felt hesitant, unsure of how to translate my personal journey into something that could resonate with a larger audience. But I reminded myself of the being of light's message: live the truth, share the light. This wasn't about perfection or performance, it was about authenticity. When I spoke, I didn't try to explain everything or provide definitive answers. Instead, I shared the truths I had come to understand: that we are all connected, that love is the foundation of everything, and that even the smallest acts of kindness can create ripples of light. I encouraged others to reflect on their own journeys, to ask questions, and to trust the light within themselves. The responses were humbling. People approached me after my talks, their eyes filled with tears and gratitude. Some shared their own stories of transformation. Others simply thanked me for reminding them of something they had forgotten. Each interaction felt like a gift, a reminder that my journey was not just my own, it was part of a larger movement. a collective awakening to the power of love and connection. One of the most profound moments came during a workshop I led at a local community center. A young man named Jason spoke about his struggles with addiction and the shame he carried because of it. "I've hurt so many people," he said, his voice breaking. "I don't know if I can ever make it right." I looked at him, seeing not his mistakes but his humanity. "Jason," I said, "the fact that you're here, sharing your story, shows your courage and your willingness to change. None of us are perfect, but we all have the capacity to grow, to heal, and to make amends. The light within you is still there, it's never too late to let it shine." Jason's tears flowed freely, and the room was filled with a palpable sense of compassion. In that moment, I felt the presence of the light, not just within me but within everyone there. It was a reminder that our purpose isn't about achieving perfection, it's about choosing love, even in the face of our imperfections. As I reflected on these experiences, I realized that my purpose wasn't a destination, it was a journey. It was about living each day with intention, aligning my actions with the truth I had been shown, and trusting that the light would guide me. It was about embracing the interconnectedness of life and recognizing that every choice, every moment, was an opportunity to contribute to the tapestry of love and light. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I no longer needed to see every step. I trusted the light within me, knowing that as long as I lived with truth and shared the light, I was fulfilling my purpose. Together, we were weaving a world where love and connection could flourish, a world where the light within each of us could shine brightly, illuminating the path for others to follow. As I neared what felt like a culmination of this chapter in my journey, the sense of interconnectedness and purpose became ever clearer. The ripples of light I had seen and experienced were no longer abstract, they were tangible, alive in the stories of those I had encountered and in the shifts I witnessed within myself. Every step I had taken since my near-death experience had been guided by a single truth: that we are all threads in an infinite tapestry, woven together by love and light. One of the most poignant moments came during the quiet afternoon at the park. I sat on a bench, watching the world around me, children laughing as they played, couples walking hand in hand, an older man feeding the birds. Each person seemed to carry their own world within them, their own joys and struggles. Yet they were all part of the same scene, connected in ways they might not even realize. As I observed, a thought struck me. This was the essence of the vision I had been shown during my near-death experience. The light wasn't just something that existed beyond, it was here. In every interaction, every act of kindness, every choice to love. It wasn't always obvious, but it was always present, waiting to be recognized and nurtured. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of the sun wash over me, and felt a deep sense of peace. I thought about the being of light and the life review I had experienced, the way it had shown me the impact of my actions on others. It had been both humbling and empowering, a reminder that every moment matters, that every choice contributes to the greater whole. The tapestry of light wasn't just about the big, transformative moments, it was about the small, everyday acts that often went unnoticed. It was the smile exchanged with a stranger, the hand extended in friendship, the forgiveness offered even when it was difficult. These were the threads that wove us together, creating a world where love and connection could thrive. As I reflected on this, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. My journey wasn't about reaching a destination or achieving perfection. It was about walking the path with intention, trusting that the light would guide me. It was about living the truth I had been shown, not as a set of rules but as a way of being. A commitment to love, connection, and authenticity. This realization brought with it a sense of clarity about the future. While I didn't know exactly what lay ahead, I knew that I wanted to continue creating spaces for connection and healing. Whether through writing, speaking, or simply being present for those around me, I wanted to be a bridge, a conduit for the light that had transformed my life. One of the final steps in this chapter of my journey was returning to the place where it had all begun, the site of the accident. I hadn't been back since that day, and the thought of it filled me with a mix of apprehension and resolve. But I knew that this was an important part of my healing, a way of honoring the experience that had changed me forever. When I arrived, the scene was both familiar and surreal. The road, the trees, the embankment where my car had rolled, they were all as I remembered. Yet they felt different, as though they belonged to a distant past. I stood at the edge of the embankment, looking down at the place where my life had nearly ended, and took a deep breath. "I'm grateful," I whispered, the words carried away by the wind. "For this place, for this moment, for everything it has taught me." Tears streamed down my face as I stood there, not in sorrow but in gratitude. The accident had been a catalyst, a moment that had shattered my old way of being and opened the door to something far greater. It had shown me the fragility of life, the depth of our connection, and the infinite power of love. As I turned to leave, I felt a sense of closure, not an ending, but a new beginning. The journey that had started on that road was far from over, but it had brought me to a place of understanding and peace. I carried the light within me, not as a memory but as a living presence, a guide that would continue to illuminate my path. In the days that followed, I began to weave the lessons of my journey into a single truth: that we are all threads in the tapestry of life, each of us contributing to its beauty and strength. Our choices, our connections, and our love are the threads that bind us, creating a world where light can shine even in the darkest corners. This understanding wasn't just for me, it was for everyone. It was a reminder that no matter where we are on our journey, we have the power to choose love, to create connection, and to contribute to the greater whole. It was an invitation to live with intention, to trust the light within, and to recognize the infinite potential that exists in every moment. And so, as I continued to walk this path, I carried with me the lessons of the light, the love that had transformed me, and the truth that we are all connected. Together, we are weaving a tapestry of infinite beauty, a reflection of the light that shines within us all.